Welcome back to the shop. What I'm making in the shop right now is this. This is from Wood Magazine. It's called Gem of a Jewelry Cabinet. This particular one is made from walnut I've had for quite a while. So because this is a copyrighted plan, we're not going to be able to, I'm not going to be able to show you all the joinery details and step-by-step specifications. They use dados and rabbits in their plants, and that's fine. If you want to build it like that, knock yourself out. But I chose to do things a little bit different. The door up here and the case top and bottom are joined with a half-blind dovetail. We also use the half-blind dovetails. Let's see if this side might come out a little better. There we go. In the front to the side of the drawer construction. I think in a future video I'll cover the changes in the drawer construction. But for today's video, what we're going to focus in on is the door and the case top and case bottom dovetail joinery. So let me show you what I got going on. I pulled out a couple of my old shop jigs. Problem we've got, let me get the pin board laid out here, is that, as you can see, it's too wide. With both jigs, you can see it's not going to fit. So we're going to have to make a new router stop pin board. The reason why we're doing that is that the neck of these pins, they are 3/16 of an inch. So because of that, I can't use a traditional router jig and dovetail bit setup. I have to make my own. What the router stop lets me do is control one axis. In this case, it's going to be the depth back. I'll explain more about that once we build the jig. Let's cover the materials on building the jig. For this jig, we've got a few building materials. A sheet of 3/4 plywood. This is a 2x4, but really, if you have a 2x2 scrap, that's more than enough. I've got a scrap piece of 1/4 inch plywood. It's approximately 16 by 16 or thereabouts. Again, you don't need that much. 2 carriage bolts. They're 3/8 of an inch in diameter, 4 inches long. Regular washer, lock washer, and nut. Not pictured. What we're going to need for the clamp bar, in addition, is a piece of 100 grit sandpaper and a little bit of spray adhesive. So not so much. I'm going to keep my hand out of the camera for you guys. Sorry. Not so much in the way of materials. So the first thing up is we want to cut the base of the jig. So I'm all set up, ready to make my first cut. I was going to use the table saw, but once I noticed that the sheet had a very nasty bow in it, I made a decision to make my first cut with my circular saw and a good plywood blade. Notice I set up a straight edge so my cut's nice and straight. So let's go ahead and make that cut now. Over here at the table saw, I've got the crosscut sled out to square up the base. The overall dimensions of the base are 17 by 16. Oh, and when I went to make the cut with the circular saw, you notice I had a piece of particle board on the ground. That's to help keep the piece from chipping up any worse than it already was. I went ahead and I real quickly just clipped the corners of my jig so I don't get hurt. The crossbar clamp is going to be 1 3/4 wide by 16 7/8 long, and I'm all set up ready to rip that. While the fence is still on the saw, I'll also cut my 1/4 spacers that are going to be 1 3/4 wide. The bottom 1/4 spacer will start at 4 inches and will continue to graduate up in 1/4 increments until we get a final overall thickness of 2 inches. So I went ahead off camera and I cross-cut the bar to its finished length. In this case, it's 16 3/4. And then I cut basically a bunch of 1/4 plywood washers, starting at 5 inches and ending up at 2.5, all at 1/4 step back. So the next thing to do is to go ahead and drill holes for the carriage bolts. But first we got to do some layout. So I went ahead and did the layout for all the bolt holes in the clamp bar and all the shims. So next thing is to go ahead and drill them. And to do that, we'll have to get the drill press set up. So over here at the drill press, I've got a fence set up, and I've got an 1/8" pilot bit to pre-drill all of my holes. And then once I get them drilled, I'll change it to 3/8 of an inch so it matches my bolt. And now with a 3/8 diameter drill bit to match the bolts, we can drill those holes. So next up, with the through holes for the bolts in the clamp bar, I need to transfer the holes to the base. So I went ahead and clamped the base to the bar and the bar to the bench. So now I'll take the same drill bit that I used to drill the holes, and I'll just create a little center point for every single hole, and then we can drill them out. Because of the offset of my router base and the desired depth I wanted my clamping bar to be on the jig, I can't go to the drill press and drill these holes, so I broke out my portable drill guide. It's a portable drill press. We'll do the same thing like we did before. We'll start out with a small pilot bit, and then we will countersink for the head of the carriage bolt next. So now I've got a 7/8" Forstner bit to drill the flat bottom hole for the head of the carriage bolt. And remember, you want to drill the large hole first. I've also got a stop set up so I don't go all the way through. So with the counter holes board, we can drill the through holes for the bolt. So I got the same 3/8 of an inch diameter rad point bit, and I'm going to start on the back side and just score the wood. Just like that, just an 1/8 inch. And now from the top side, we'll go all the way through this time. Let's talk about jig assembly here real quick. How this goes together: the bolt will go through the board on each side. The appropriate shims will go into place. In this case, since I need a little less than a 1/2 inch, we'll go with 2 shims. piece of material to be machined. Typically I like to let it sit on one or the other sides. It doesn't have to be square and flush with the jig, but it doesn't hurt really either. And then finally, the mounting or clamping bar comes into place. A regular washer, a lock washer, and a nut. And that's not going anywhere. Now, what I'm going to do on the clamping bar, I'm going to put some 100 grit sandpaper on the underneath side to help increase its traction. And then I'll show you how we use a jig. To use a jig, you've got to know a couple things. Because I route dovetails with 2 different router setups, I use 2 different bits. The first setup we're going to focus on is the one with the D-handle router in front with a 3/16 spiral. What I did was I measured over from the edge of the bit to the edge of the base, and I added in all that plus my dovetail depth back minus a 1/16 of an inch. I like leaving a 1/16 of an inch as a safety margin. So once I had that information, I took my square and I just made sure that my pieces were straight and tight up against the stop. So my square's my stop. So now we're ready to cut the pockets, the pins. So that's the pins, the first pin on one of the doors. What I'll do is I'll route the other pins, and then I'll have to find my depth setting and my depth back with the dovetail bit to remove the material. Once I do that, I can come in with a chisel and chisel to my lines. And then I think we'll go ahead and show you what one of the joints looks like finished. So as you can see, I'm tightening the bolts up. In this case, I'm just using my good old crescent wrench to loosen and tighten the bolts. Now as far as router direction goes, I'm going to use my pencil to represent a bit for you. I'm starting over here on the right hand side, very lightly skating across to the left, and then I'm gently working back and forth until the router hits stop. So now it's the same drill, but this time I'm going to use my 1/2 inch dovetail bit. There we go. There. It's my 1/2 inch dovetail bit. Now the reason I use my spiral bit to pre-plow is because I'm trying to take pressure off the dovetailing bit. So it's the same drill. I'm gonna have to obviously set up a different depth for my bit and a different stop position. Once I dial those in, it's the same procedure. It's just back and forth, cutting and staying away from my lines. The idea is to leave about 32nd of an inch of the back baseline and a little less on the side walls for chiseling. Once we do that, we'll show you a finished joint. So as you can see, after some adjustments to the router's depth and the depth of the backstop, I'm able to cut, oops, sorry guys, I'm able to cut the pins. Now you notice I get a little bit of meat left in the corners and on the side walls. I'll have to chisel that off, and once we do, I'll show you the final joint. So as you can see, this is how the dovetail joint goes together after a little chiseling. I hope you guys found this video informational. I'm going to spend the rest of my time just cleaning up my joints with my chisels, dry fitting the door and the case together, and keep moving on with the project. Hopefully we get to see you in the shop again here soon. One other tip. If you have to go away for a period of time and you're worried about your stock cupping, twisting, and dancing on you, put a board on top, put some weight on it, or in this case I got 4 clamps clamped down to the bench to keep that stock from twisting. So what exactly are all the changes I do to these cabinets? Well, you've already seen a few of them. The dovetail joinery for the case door, for the door and for the case. I changed the drawers. I do a dovetail front and back. I changed the drawer sides and back thickness. They like 1/2 inch. I do 1/4 inch. The bottom, it's a piece of 1/4 inch. This is to make the drawer lighter. The ring bars, they like to use brass solid bar stock. I like to use wood. The back of the cabinet here, rather than a piece of 1/4 inch birch plywood, I decided to make it a nice panel out of solid wood. The reason is this is a tabletop version and you will see the back of these, so inevitably, why not? The back's also 1/2 inch thick, by the way. That's pretty much it. So hopefully you enjoyed this video. Get on out and shop and build something, will you?